Hello, love of lit folks. We are in our week 28 to get started, and you have started reading this great book called Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of Nim, and you are well into it right now, maybe about a third of the way through it. Do you know what NIMH NIM is yet? Well, I thought I was going to tell you this week, but when I think about it, and as I go through the next week, I realize you might get some ideas. If you haven't looked it up and figured out what it is yet, maybe you'll have a better idea of what it is after you have read your work for this week. So, next week, I will ask you again what NIM stands for, and we'll see if you know, but I'll tell you anyway at that time. So we are going to start out with our vocabulary roots as we always do. And so go ahead and pull out your papers that have the vocab on it. Today it's both of your roots are Latin roots again. You are going to do a page that looks, well, let me find it here. Didn't bring my book out with me today. You are going to make a page that has nove in it and noun in it. And looks like I don't have it with me. Sorry, I didn't bring it out here. All right, so you're going to have again, it's a double page like you always do, so go ahead and cut down your pages. Your Latin root noun, which is kind of funny because that's also an English word. The Latin root noun means declare. Some of the words that come from noun are announce and denounce and pronounce. Those all have something to do with what you say or what you declare. So look on your packet, and I have a picture of the page as it looks, and you can go ahead and work on that. Put those all together. Now, one thing I haven't been mentioning, but we do each week, and I don't know if you've still been doing it, but I hope that you do, and that is go in the front of your notebook where it has all the Latin roots that we've been working on this year, Latin and Greek roots, and you usually find it on your list and then put the definition that we have talked about on there. If you have not done that, go ahead and catch up on that and do that because you are going to need it later. And also, another thing that I would like you to do is spend maybe 15 minutes. We haven't done this a whole lot. I've kind of depended on you doing it on your own. But I would like you to spend about 15 minutes to go back through all your Latin and Greek roots that we have talked about and see if you remember what they are. It's really important because there's so many English words that come from those roots. And later on in school, as you come across big words that you might not know, if you know what the root is, then you can figure out a little bit better what that word means or really what the word is. And then, of course, when you get in higher testing, and that there'll be opportunity for you to know the vocabulary, and this will really help you, I promise you. So go ahead and make sure that you remember those Latin and Greek roots that you have learned this year, and just keep reviewing them. It's not a hard thing. It only takes a few minutes. Okay, so go ahead and finish up your composition book with your vocabulary roots. Okay, and then today, after you finish all that, we're going to talk about something, and you already know what it is, really, but I don't know if you've ever heard the term, and it's called making inferences. You do it all the time, and I'm going to give you an example of making an inference. This is just kind of a daily example, all right? Suppose I get up one morning and I decided I want to go out and take a walk. So I look out the window and I decide, well, I think I'm going to put on my heavy coat, my knit cap, my mittens, my scarf, get it all around my face. I'm going to get on maybe some boots, and I'm just going to bundle all up to go outside for my walk. So if you hear me that's what I'm going to do, what kind of weather do you think it is outside? Do you think it's hot and sunny? No, because you don't wear all that stuff on a hot sunny day, do you? You wear it on a very cold day. All right, so what you did was you inferred. I did not tell you what the weather was like, but you could infer what the weather was like by what I was wearing or what I was putting on to go outside. All right, and you do that a lot in your reading, believe it or not. And basically what you do is you look at your text, and I'll just use the same example, but we're going to go on maybe in some of your reading that you've been doing this week. But so you'll look in the text and you'll say, okay, it'll say, she put on her hat, her coat, her scarf, her mittens, her boots, and went outside. That's what the text says. Well, you know that when you wear hats and coats and boots and mittens and all that, you do that in cold weather. That's what you know. So the text says one thing, you know something, and so what you do is you infer that it's cold outside because she's wearing all that warm stuff to keep herself warm, okay? So that is all you're going to, really, that's the main thing we're going to talk about today. And when you think about it in your reading, you might want to think about how many times you infer things, all right? You've already done it with Mr. Frisbee, with Jonathan Frisbee. Have you met Jonathan Frisbee in the book? Have you seen him do things? Is there anything about him that you've actually read what he's like? No, but you can still make some inferences about what he's like. You can just the fact that the owl spoke with Mrs. Frisbee because of her husband gives you a clue. Oh, he must have been an important person, or a good mouse, or a good, he must have had good character. He must have done something good for somebody. You can infer that. And it seems like everywhere Mrs. Frisbee turns, she kind of gains acceptance because of her husband, Jonathan Frisbee. So it didn't really tell you exactly why, but you could infer from what other people or animals were saying. I say people, I mean characters. So when I say people, I mean the characters in the book. All right? So you are inferring. You can also infer some things about Mrs. Frisbee's character. The fact that she goes to such great lengths to keep her son Timothy safe. What does that tell you about her? What can you infer about her? The fact that she helps the crow untangle himself from the string. What does that infer about her? The fact that she notices things like the rats going back and forth and the cat not bothering them. What can you infer about her observation skills? You don't even know it a lot of times, but when you are reading, you infer things all the time. And what you do is you read what's in the text. Well, you know certain things, and so then you connect the two of them. All right? So you're going to make a page making inferences. All right, you have a picture of it in your packet, I believe. And all this is saying is you have background knowledge. You know things, right? You know that in cold weather you wore warm clothes. And the text says a certain thing. The text says, She's wearing warm clothes. So you can infer from that, from your knowledge and from what you read in the text, that it's cold outside. Okay, so this is a very simple page. All you're going to do is put the two puzzle pieces. You can put them in however you want to. Then you're going to write these same things down here that I've already mentioned. Okay. And up here, you know, it has this magnifying glass, be a reading detective, and that's really all you're doing. And it's kind of an intuitive thing. You already, since you have lived life, since you've been around for many years, you know things that that help you connect things in your reading. Okay, so that's what you're going to do on that tab, on that one. You're going to be working on that page. And that is the main thing we're going to talk about today in your lit. So the only other thing is we'll talk a little bit about the book. You have gotten well into your book now. You've actually, like I said, you've read about a third of it, and you haven't. It's been more of an introduction. It's kind of set the stage for the rest of the book. All right, so we know who the main characters are. There's going to be a couple more main characters that are introduced, but we know who some of the important characters are. We know the setting of the story. We know some of the plot. We know the problem, one of the problems. Now you're gonna see as you read that there's another pretty big problem that needs to be solved in this story. But the big problem right now is the fact that Timothy is sick and she can't move and the plow's coming, so what is she going to do? Okay, that's the problem. So we're gonna work through. We're kind of on the upward trend of the roller coaster, and we've come to the conflict, part of the conflict, and we haven't come to the climax yet. We haven't come to the top yet. We're going to get there. So, so that's pretty much where we are in your book. Next week you'll get a little bit further. You'll be introduced to more characters, some really important characters. You might find out a little bit more about what's going on with the rats and why the owl told Mrs. Frisbee to go to them. You might you'll probably find out a little bit more about Jonathan Frisbee and why he's so well known and well loved by everybody who knew him. So you're gonna actually have a lot of questions answered during this next week, but you won't have the problem solved yet. So keep reading. So I hope you enjoy yourself. It's kind of a short lesson here. We'd spend more of it discussing if we were together, but I want you to use your brain. Think about some of the questions. Think about the characters, what they're like. Think about why you think they're that way. Think about the setting, how that affects what the characters in there do, and how it's affected their lives. Think about the problems. Think about some ideas about how they might solve those problems, and you know, you can kind of predict some things. So think about stuff like that while you're reading. Don't just read it quickly and try and answer the questions quickly. Okay, just think through, you know, some things like this. And when you're answering your questions, a lot of the questions, and I think I mentioned this last week, a lot of the questions are call for answers that are more than one sentence. All right. Look through when there is a question. Go find in your book where it talks about that, in the chapter where it talks about that. And I realized yesterday, I didn't know this, I'd forgotten, that in my copy of the book, there's chapters, but they're not numbered. See what I mean? So when I'm telling you, read chapter so-and-so to so-and-so, it's kind of hard to do. So what I would recommend is, well, for one thing, it does have the titles, so that helps you. But also, you can number these if you want to, just in a light pencil. But anyway, that's. But when you go through those, just find in the chapter where it talks about it, and most of the time it has a little bit more description than just one sentence or one little deal. So go ahead and answer the question thoroughly. Add everything that you see that's in there. All right, that'll help you. It helps you in a couple of ways. One, it helps you get the answer correct, but also it helps you remember better, because there's some of those details that you just kind of gloss over when you're reading. If you write them down, they're easier for you to remember, and then you can make connections a little bit easier as you go along in the rest of the book. Okay, so on that note, I'll say goodbye. Hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.